Hello, good morning, and welcome back to the channel. Today I am proud to present my 10th build, build number 10. This build is one I'm entitling the Dark Stranger. My name is Nathan, and let's get started. This build is going to be kind of this Dark Stranger in the corner type character. They are going to be lurking in the shadows and poisoning their enemies' minds with whispers and lies and deception. And this is basically going to be a character that's going to control our enemies by filling them with fear and projecting illusions and kind of controlling their mental powers. And this could be very appropriate potentially for a villain who stalks the party, or perhaps a player character with these things in mind. Now, here's our agenda for today. I will introduce and talk about the build concept, and I'll talk about level 1, levels 2 through 6, levels 7 through 9, 10 through 13, and 14 through 17 before summarizing. And at each of our key thresholds, so level 6, level 9, level 13, and level 17, I will be giving a tactics report for this build in particular about what this build can do and what it's capable of. Now, for the concept of this build is primarily going to be a controller build focused on fear and psychic effects. So much like the build last week, which was the Dreadlord. You can check my link up there. This build is going to be focusing on fear, and it's a little bit of a spooky one, which I consider appropriate given that it's October. This build will also be capable of some burst damage and damage per round while maintaining a fair amount of durability. Now, an interesting thing here is, depending on some of the choices that you make at the later levels, this build can skyrocket to be a very powerful damage per round build, and I'll talk about that when we get there. This build also has effective support capabilities with some of your spell selections, as well as out-of-combat skills, thanks to what our core class is going to be. Now, for this book in particular, you'll need the Player's Handbook, Zenithar's Guide to Everything, Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, and I am pulling one spell out of Fizban's Treasury of Dragons that I really like, but you don't necessarily need that spell, and so that book is more optional. That said, the other three are pretty important, and I would, you definitely want them. All right, so at level 1, we are starting again as a Warlock, and I know I have a lot of builds that have this dip, and this is going to be important, and why will become obvious pretty quickly. So, as a Warlock, we get proficiency with light armor and simple weapons, as well as wisdom and charisma saves, and we get our Pact Magic, which is the Warlock's spell casting. We get a limited number of spell slots that all come back on a short rest, and they are all at the same level. And we also get our Otherworldly Patron. Now, much like my build 2 weeks ago, if you want to check that one out up there, the Herald of Vengeance, we are going with the Hexblade Patron, which means that we get the Hex Warrior feature. This gives us proficiency with medium armor and shields and martial weapons, so goodbye light armor and simple armor proficiencies. We replace them with something better. And we can also touch a weapon during a long rest and bond with it. It can't have the two-handed property. And we can then make attacks with that weapon using our charisma instead of our strength or dexterity. Now, importantly, this can work with one-handed ranged weapons, namely the hand crossbow, which is what I'm going to be planning on using on this build in particular. And as a Hexblade Warlock, we get the Hex Warrior feature, as I talked about, and we also get the Hexblade's Curse feature. So this is a feature that we can use once per short rest. It takes a bonus action. We designate a target, and we can crit them on a 19 or 20. Whenever we damage them, we can deal an extra damage equal to our proficiency modifier, and if they die, we recover hit points based on our Warlock level and our Charisma modifier. And yes, this is a very powerful feature, and we're going to be throwing it on our target for a little bit of extra damage per round, and it can help with crits and that kind of thing. Overall, very strong, very powerful, and we're taking this dip at first level mainly for the armor and weapon proficiencies, as well as the ability to make our attacks with our charisma. Now, for our race today, I am going to be taking the custom lineage race out of Tasha's. This is the first time I've used it. This is an option that is exclusive to that book, and what does this race get us? So we get a free feat, and I'm going to be taking the Crossbow Expert feat here. We're going to be planning on using this to just bump our damage per round, and it'll be very useful to have in this build in the long run. And then you can either take Dark Vision or a skill proficiency. We're going to take Dark Vision, and I imagine we're going to be roughly human or humanoid. You're basically having this as a custom version of whatever race would fit your flavor best. I really like the free feat here. I think it helps a lot. You could also do variant human, but then you're missing out on potentially starting with a higher charisma and being able to take a half feat. So I like the way that custom lineage just kind of works from both the feat and the stats perspective. Now, as for our starting stats, we're doing point buy as always. I'm going to be taking a 14 in dexterity, a 15 in constitution, a 10 in wisdom, and a 15 with our +2 there. Now, we are specifically setting up our constitution to be odd for a feat that we're going to be taking later on, and our charisma to be odd for a half feat that we're going to be taking again later on. And as a first level Warlock, our starting hit points are 8 plus our Constitution modifier, so that will total 10. Now, I want to talk a little bit about skills in this character because, again, this is a character where skills are going to be important. Like the Herald of Vengeance, I'm going to be taking the Charlatan background. This gives us proficiency in Deception and Sleight of Hand, as well as the Disguise Kit and the Forgery Kit. And as a Warlock, we get proficiency in two skills of our choice from the following list: Arcana, Deception, History, Intimidation, Investigation, Nature, and Religion. Now, I'm going to be picking Deception and Intimidation. And once again, with the background rules, if your background gives you a proficiency in a skill you already have, you can replace it with one of your choice. So we're going to be replacing that Deception proficiency with Persuasion proficiency. And one of the key things on this character is going to be the ability to be proficient in all three of these core kind of social interaction skills, and we're going to be getting expertise in them actually later on. Now, as for our spells that we get as a first level Warlock, we get 2 cantrips of our choice, and I would take the Mind Sliver spell as well as Minor Illusion. Mind Sliver potentially lets us give a target a penalty to their next saving throw. And this is going to be really nice to help our targets kind of miss their saving throws. It's not going to be a part of our core damage per round rotation, but situationally, as this is mainly a control build, this is going to be very useful. And Minor Illusion will just give us the ability to twist and manipulate things out of combat, and is a great utility spell in that regard. Now, we have one first level spell slot from our pack magic that will come back on a short rest. We get to know 2 spells. And I would take Shield and maybe Hex here. Hex takes our concentration and isn't really that beneficial. And at the early levels, it is good for damage per round, which is why I'm taking it here. But honestly, you don't need it. We will have much better things to do with our concentration later. And something like Armor of Agathis might serve you a lot better in the long run. Now, as for our starting equipment, we want to do the gold buy route here because Warlocks with their starting equipment won't be able to get what we want. And we want a hand crossbow and scale mail, and potentially a musical instrument of our choice, which we'll be using as a spellcasting focus later on. Long run, this character is going to want to use a magical hand crossbow and the best medium armor that money can buy, so probably half plate or magical half plate of some kind like that. Now, at level 2, we are going to be going into our main class, which we're going to stick with the rest of the way, and that is going to be Bard. So as a first level Bard, we get the Bard spellcasting, and they are a ritual caster, which means we can ritual cast any spell that we know. We get our Bardic Inspiration feature, which we can use as a bonus action to hand out a d6 to any of our allies, which they can then spend to help like an attack roll or a skill check or a saving throw. And you can use it after you see what the dice roll is, but before you see what the result is, and it lasts for 10 minutes. We have a number of uses equal to our charisma modifier, so right now that is 3. And we get all these back on a long rest. And when you multiclass into Bard, you also get proficiency in any skill of your choice, and we're going to take Insight proficiency here. This will further augment our social ability by allowing us to read our targets we're trying to manipulate socially. We also get 2 cantrips of our choice here, and I'm going to take Mage Hand, again for that out of combat utility to move things around and that kind of thing, as well as it wouldn't be a Bard build if you didn't have Vicious Mockery, so we're absolutely going to take that here. We also get 2 first level spell slots, and we get to learn 4 Bard spells. And the ones that I would take here are Command, Dissonant Whispers, Sleep, and Fairy Fire. Command doesn't take concentration, and you can use it to control and manipulate enemies. And it actually scales pretty darn well with upcasting because you get to target one additional creature per cast, per level that you upcast it. Dissonant Whispers is a solid nuke at this level and forces enemies to move and can provoke opportunity attacks. And it kind of fits with our whole theme of whispering messages into the enemy's mind and manipulating them psychically. Sleep at this level can potentially end encounters by just knocking out all the enemies, and we'll be keeping it for a little while. And then Fairy Fire is going to be our go-to damage per round spell. We can cast this in an area to give advantage on attack rolls against all targets that fail their save. All right, at level 3, we are a Bard 2, and this means that we get Jack of all trades. This feature says that any skill that we're not proficient in, we get to add half our proficiency bonus to, so that would be, give us a +1. This actually works on all ability checks, so we'll get to add half our proficiency modifier to our initiative as well because it is an ability check, so that's kind of a cool thing. We also get this Song of Rest feature, so if we're able to like play some music during a short rest, anyone who spends hit dice during that short rest recovers an additional d6 hit points, no matter how many hit dice they spend, as long as they spend at least one. We also get another first level spell slot here and another spell of our choice. I would probably learn the Disguise Self spell here on this character. I think this is a great kind of utility out of combat thing to put on a new face and just further enable us to infiltrate and manipulate in that regard. You can potentially combine this spell with Minor Illusion. So if you disguise yourself as someone that you've seen before, you can use the Minor Illusion spell to potentially replicate that person's voice if you've heard it. So you might not need to make a performance check, or you'll be able to do it a little better. And this is a really fun combo for infiltration that you can use at low levels. Infiltration and impersonation. At level 4, we are a Bard 3, which means we get our Bard College. And we are going with the College of Whispers. This is one where you're really focused on uncovering secrets and manipulating people, and that really fits into the core of what I kind of envision this character doing. You're that guy who's, sitting in the dark corner of the bar, listening in, gathering information, and then when you make your move on your target, you know everything about them that you need to get them to do what you want. So as a Whispers Bard, we get the Psychic Blades feature. And what this does is when we hit a creature with a weapon attack, we can consume one of our Bardic Inspiration dice to deal an extra 2d6 psychic damage to that enemy. And we can only do this once per round on our turn. And this damage scales with our Bard level, so this is kind of like a sneak attack, and we can basically do this 3 times per long rest currently, but that will be fixed very soon. We also get the Words of Terror feature, and this is kind of more of a flavorful out of combat thing that you can do, but if you can talk to a humanoid alone for at least a minute, you can attempt to sow fear into their mind. At the end of their conversation, they have to make a wisdom save against our spell save DC. And if they fail, they're frightened of us for 1 hour. Or they can be frightened of us or another creature of our choice. So we could make them afraid of their friend or the bartender or ourselves or an ally or anything like that. And they're frightened until they're attacked or damaged, or they witness their allies being attacked or damaged. But the cool thing is if they succeed on their save, they have no idea that we even tried to do this. And we can only do this once per short or long rest. But this is still a very useful social manipulation tool, and I'm all about it. You could potentially even, if you were able to subtly mind sliver them and at the same time, you could make them fail their save. But that's an attack. Probably wouldn't work, but it's just a fun idea. And it fits so well with the theme of this character and what they're doing. If this is a villain, they might approach the party and frighten them prior to, launching an ambush or something like that. And yeah, it's fun, it's cool. And as a Bard level 3, we also get our first round of expertise. So we get to pick any 2 skills that we're proficient in and double our proficiency bonus with them. So we're going to take expertise in deception and persuasion here. I think these are probably the core social skills, and we'll pick up the other ones a little bit later. And as a third level bard, we also get second level spells and slots here. So I'm going to learn the Phantasmal Force spell here. This lets you basically use your concentration to project an image into a target's head that only they can see, and it can potentially damage them and that kind of thing. This spell is one where you really need to understand how it works and maybe even talk with your DM about the potential effects of some illusions you could use. But again, it fits with it's not necessarily the best spell, but it fits with our theme of being kind of that psychic menace who is planning and sowing fear in their enemy's mind. At this level, I would also consider retraining the sleep spell for Tasha's Hideous Laughter. This is a really good single target control spell, and sleep might not be ending many encounters at character level 4. If sleep has been effective for you, you can probably keep it, but eventually I would probably retrain for Tasha's Hideous Laughter, or another spell of your choice. But at level 5, we are a Bard 4, and we get our first ability score increase or feat. And I am going to take the telepathic feat on this character. This lets us cast Detect Thoughts, as well as increasing an ability score of our choice. We're obviously going to pump our charisma. But it also lets us communicate telepathically with any creature within 30 feet of us. And they have to share a language to be able to understand us. We are able to communicate in our language, but they can't communicate back, and they don't have to be willing. So you could potentially be sitting there in your dark corner, telepathically speaking into your target's mind for 1 minute. If that doesn't freak them out and they don't run away, then you could potentially use your words of terror on them and frighten them of anything that you want. And yeah, conversation can be one-sided, and not only does this let you do that, you can also use this to communicate telepathically with your own party, and I find that to be very useful. Because we've bumped our charisma modifier to 4, we get another use of Bardic Inspiration here, so we're up to 4 per long rest. We also get to learn a new cantrip here, and I would probably learn the Prestidigitation cantrip. This is just a nice utility and fun thing, and you can use it to keep your clothes clean all the time. We also get to learn another spell here, and I would probably learn the Silence spell. This spell creates an area of silence where verbal components of spells cannot be performed. And this is one of the... It's actually a very powerful way to shut down an enemy caster if you put it in the right place. You know, you could combine this with a martial character who's good at grappling, for example, to hold the enemy caster inside the silent area so they can't cast spells. And you could also do some interesting things with this where you could silence somebody that you're talking to, but then you can talk to them telepathically because you have that feat. And yeah, it's overall, again, fun, cool utility. You may or may not be using it very often. But at level 6, we are a Bard 5. Our Bardic Inspiration dice bumps from a D6 to a D8, and our Psychic Blades feature from our College of Whispers bumps from 2d6 to 3d6 extra damage. But more importantly, we get the Font of Inspiration ability here. And this is something that all bards get, but it means that our Bardic Inspiration dice all come back on a short rest or a long rest now. So there you can spam them much more freely, and I'm now very happy to use them every turn for damage per round with our Psychic Blades. We also get 3rd level spells here, and there are a lot of good ones, namely things like Hypnotic Pattern and Slow. I'm going to be planning on taking Slow first, specifically because Hypnotic Pattern requires all the targets to be grouped up, and it can potentially affect your allies. And Slow, you just point and you pick. And so I'm going to go with Slow here first, but we're going to be picking up Hypnotic Pattern next level. And if you want to do it in a different order, that's fine. But go for your preferred control spell of your choice that kind of fits the flavor of your character. And continue to retrain your spells as you need. If you have a low level one that you're not using, there's something else that you want, absolutely, retrain to something else. But at level 6, it is time for our first tactics report. What is this character doing? What are they capable of? So we have 2 main plans here. If we're going for damage per round, we're going to cast Fairy Fire on our target. I'm going to be assuming the target has failed their save. And we're also going to be applying our Hexblade's Curse to them. And then in round 2 and beyond, we're just going to plink them with our hand crossbow and make a bonus action attack again with our hand crossbow, thanks to the crossbow expert feat. Now, importantly, the reason that we didn't take, something like Eldritch Blast out of Warlock and we're not scaling with that here is because the Psychic Blades feature out of Whisper's Bard specifically requires you to make a weapon attack against the target, not a cantrip attack. So that was one of the main reasons why we've got this Hex Warrior with the hand crossbow, because we need to use a hand crossbow to be able to get the most out of our Psychic Blades feature. Now, if we're going with our control plan, we're probably going to be casting slow in the first round to cripple as many enemies as we can. We will then Hexblade's Curse our primary target, and beyond that, we'll attack them and use our bonus action attack on them with the hand crossbow, or we can use non-concentration spells as needed. And we can do this if we're doing damage per round as well. This character is very flexible in that regard. But we've got things like Command, Dissonant Whispers, Vicious Mockery to hurt their attack rolls, or Mind Sliver potentially to make them fail their save against slow so they keep being slowed, and that kind of thing. Control undo damage as needed on this character. But let's see what our damage looks like if we're going to focus purely on damage per round. So we get to make 2 hand crossbow attacks with advantage, thanks to the target failing their save against Fairy Fire. These will each do 1d6 plus 7 piercing damage, so plus 4 from our charisma and plus 3 from our proficiency modifier, thanks to Hexblade's Curse. And we also crit on a 19 or 20, again, thanks to Hexblade's Curse. And once per turn, we're going to burn one of our Bardic Inspirations to do Psychic Blades damage against the target. And because we get our Bardic Inspirations back on a short rest, I would definitely consider this damage to be sustainable, not only for one encounter, but potentially multiple encounters, assuming that you're able to short rest between them. So, against an enemy with an armor class of 10 and no bonus to their saves, we'd be doing 34.6 damage per round. And against an enemy with an armor class of 15 and plus 5 to their saves, we would be doing 31 damage per round. Now, these are actually very similar numbers to our build last week, the Dreadlord. We are a little bit better against the higher armor class thanks to having advantage, and a little bit worse against the lower armor class thanks to a smaller damage dice. That build also had extra attack at this level, and they were doing extra attack and polearm master half attack and having 3 attacks, and this build only has 2, and we're doing comparable damage per round. We're still, not on the level of a dedicated damage per round build, but we're actually doing not bad. And this character, when you combine this with a control that we might have, this is solid. Now, importantly, our concentration spell doesn't control if we're going for pure damage per round, but it does buff our allies and also helping them pump out more damage. Now, at level 7, we are a Bard 6, and we get the Counter Charm feature. This is honestly one of, if not the most useless features that Bards get. This basically lets us use our action to play a happy little tune, and it gives our allies advantage on saves to overcome charm and fear and that kind of thing. But it takes our action, and honestly, your action is probably going to be better spent doing other things. So you're probably never going to be using this, but in the right situation, like say against a ghost you can't see, it could be really good. We also get our next Whispers feature here, which is called Mantle of Whispers. And what this does, if a humanoid dies within 30 feet of us, we can use our reaction to magically capture its shadow. And we retain the shadow until we use it or we finish a long rest. And as an action, we can use the shadow, and when we do, the shadow vanishes, and it transforms into a disguise on you. We now look like the dead person, healthy and alive, and the disguise lasts for an hour or until we end it as a bonus action. And while we're in the disguise, we also gain access to that information the target would freely share with an acquaintance, a casual acquaintance. Information could include general details on its background or personal life, but doesn't include secrets. It's enough that you can pass yourself off as the person by drawing on their memories. Another creature can attempt to see through the disguise by succeeding on an insight check contested by our deception check, which we are an expert in, and we also get an extra +5 bonus. And once we capture a shadow, we can't capture another shadow until we finish a short or long rest. So potentially you could have multiple shadows at the same time, because you could capture a shadow, finish a short rest, capture another shadow. And the cool thing about this, let's say you want to sneak into a castle, you kill the guard, you become the guard, and you know enough to pass yourself off as the guard. And this ability to eliminate and replace someone with yourself We could kind of do that with Disguise Self plus Minor Illusion, but this is far better. And yeah. Now, importantly, this doesn't actually give us the ability to use their voice, but we could do that with Minor Illusion potentially. And so you might consider dropping the Disguise Self spell at this level. But I would honestly keep it around. It's good to be able to adopt a false persona, especially when you don't kill someone. But the other thing about this is the fact that it gives you their memories. You know, if you kill someone you meant to interrogate and question, you could also get some general information about them just by putting on their shadow. And this is such a cool feature. If used as a villain, the villain could kill and then replace an important NPC the party's about to interact with, and sow fear and mistrust in them. And yeah, that's just so cool. And I mean, you could even do it as a player character, again, with the right setting. We also get an additional 3rd level spell here. And I would honestly take Hypnotic Pattern. This spell is super powerful, and as long as you can catch only enemies in the area of effect, they just get incapacitated and charmed and can't move or even do anything. And you can just use that to lock them down and control them while you and your allies beat on them. It doesn't give, advantage, but and I believe, as I recall here, that if your allies do attack them, they will get a save. Let me verify that. Yeah, so if your targets do attack them, they will, it ends the effect immediately without a save, and another creature can use their action to shake them out of it. But importantly, what you can do with this is you can control everybody, let your allies set up or potentially single out a target that you want to kill, and you can kill the enemies one by one while the rest of them sit there stupefied. So potentially very powerful control, and I would use this situationally with slow at this level. Just kind of use whatever control spell you feel fits the encounter best. At level 8, we are a Bard 7, and this means 4th level spells. And I really want Ralathim's Psychic Lance. This is that spell out of Fizzbands. You pick a target, you nuke them. You don't even have to see them if they're within range. You can just speak their name, and it blasts them psychically. And I believe there's an intelligence save required, and if they fail, they become incapacitated for their next turn, which is, very similar to Hypnotic Pattern. And so this is a very powerful nuke, doesn't require concentration, so you can use this to control an additional enemy as well as damage them while you're concentrating on your control spell. At level 9, we are Bard 8, and I'm going to use our ability score Increase Our Feat to bump our Charisma to 20. Because we bumped our Charisma modifier to 5, we get another use of Bardic Inspiration, and we get to learn another spell. And I would, on my character, I would learn Greater Invisibility here. This lets us become invisible, and it lasts and as long as we are able to maintain our concentration or a minute. And importantly, it doesn't end if you do anything. So you can use this to sneak in. You can use this to give yourself advantage because the enemies can't see you, and the enemies would have disadvantage to attack you back. Not necessarily as good as Fairy Fire because it doesn't help your allies, but also better in a way because it doesn't require a save. And if you need to switch targets to somebody that wasn't in the original Fairy Fire, you'll still have advantage because you're invisible. But at level 9, it is indeed time for our next tactics report. So what has changed since last time? We've gained 4th level spells and slots, as well as bumping our charisma to 20. Our proficiency modifier has gone up to 4. And we've got Mantle of Whispers kind of for that out of combat utility control, infiltration, replace the person you kill ability. So for our damage per round plan, we're going to use our setup round to either cast Fairy Fire or Greater Invisibility on ourselves, and then set up Hexblade's Curse. And our control plan is to set up with our control spell of choice, so probably Hypnotic Pattern or Slow at this level, and then put our Hexblade's Curse on our target. And we will use our non-concentration spells as needed, so Ralathim's Psychic Lance, Command, Dissonant Whispers, etc. So what does our damage per round look like now? It's actually largely unchanged since last time. Our to hit has gone up, and we are doing 1d6 plus 9 damage because we bumped our charisma and our proficiency modifier has gone up. And our Psychic Blade's damage is still 3d6. So against an enemy with an armor class of 10, we are going to be doing 38.7 damage per round, and against an enemy with armor class of 15, we would be doing 35.6. And since last time, this is an increase of about 4 to 4.5 points, or 12 to 15%. And this is not that much. This is just because of our charisma and proficiency bump. 2 damage per hit approximately, plus a little bit better accuracy. Compared to our other damage per round builds, we are definitely falling behind at this point, but our control has gone up considerably thanks to the power of our 3rd and 4th level control spells. Although we already had the 3rd level control spells, so it's mainly that 4th level spell slot and things like that are doing work here. But we have set ourselves up for what is coming next. So at level 10, we are Bard 9. Our Song of Rest, the healing extra when an ally spends a hit dice on a short rest, bumps up to a d8. We also get 5th level spells at this level, and I would take the Synaptic Static spell. This is basically a psychic fireball. It does the same damage as a fireball, same area of effect, but it's an intelligence save, and if the targets fail their saves, they get a d6 penalty to ability checks and attack rolls until they make another save. And so this is another great non-concentration control spell that also does damage in a pretty wide area of effect. And I think it kind of fits again with our whole theme of using our mind powers to completely overload the minds of our enemies. Now, at level 11, we are Bard 10, and this is a big level for us. Our Bardic Inspiration bumps to a d10, which is great. We also get expertise in 2 additional skills of our choice, and we're going to take Intimidation and Insight to round out our social manipulation skills. We get another 5th level spell slot here, but we don't get to learn more 5th level spells from our class, but I will talk about that coming up. The damage of our Psychic Blades bumps up to 5d6, and we get the Magical Secrets feature, so we get to plunder and learn any 2 spells of our choice from any spell list from any class in the game. And these must be a level that we can cast, so these are going to be 5th level or lower spells. So we get to pick any 2 spells of our choice. What do we want? I want Find Greater Steed. I've used this build for the last 2 builds, and this is going to be the 3rd build in a row that gets it. But we get to summon a mount of our choice, and we're going to be taking a griffin on this character. Importantly, the griffin doesn't take any action of ours to control. It's a summon that we just get. And importantly, it has this ability where any spell that we cast on it that targets only ourself can also target the steed. So we can use this to potentially replicate a very powerful spell, and I'm going to be doing some pretty fun combos with this. Interestingly enough here, bards can get this spell before the class that the spell is exclusive to. This is exclusively a paladin spell normally, and bards can get it at level 10, and paladins would have to wait until level 13 to get it. I'm also going to plunder Wall of Force here just because it's such an incredibly powerful control spell. You can box in a group of targets and keep them from doing anything because they can't get through the wall, and then you can deal with them later. You can pick a different spell if you want, but Wall of Force is great, and I really like it. So at level 12, we are a Bard 11, and we don't get anything here other than 6 level spell slots and the ability to learn 6 level spells. And importantly, we're going to learn the Eye Bite spell here. So this spell targets ourself, and it's a concentration spell, and when we cast it, and as an action on each of our turns that follows, we can make a target unconscious, or we can let me check my reference here. We can make our target unconscious, or all right. So we get to make we force the target to make a wisdom save. We get to pick one of the following 3 effects. We can the sleep effect, which knocks them unconscious until they take any damage, or another creature uses its action to shake them awake. We can do the panicked option, so that frightens them of us, and this is the extra powerful version of fear. So on their turn, they must take their action to dash away from us and move by the safest and shortest available route. And if they end their turn at least 60 feet away from us, and can no longer see us, the effect ends. And then we can sicken them, and the sicken option gives them disadvantage on attack rolls and ability checks, and at the end of each of their turns, they can make another wisdom save, and if they succeed, the effect ends. Now, we get to, fire this off every turn against somebody, but we can't target a creature again if they've succeeded on a saving throw against this particular casting. But the cool thing is, because this spell targets ourselves and is a self buff, it can also target our steed. Our steed will use our spell save DC, and it's kind of technically a different casting of eye bite. So if they fail their save against us, our horse can, it's not a horse, it's a griffin. Our griffin can eye bite them. And we can use this to potentially control multiple enemies and just eye bite everybody on the field. And overall, super powerful. And, if you knock someone unconscious and then they get woken up, since they haven't succeeded on a save, you can just knock them unconscious again. And I'm going to be planning on using this in our control, especially given the fact that we can use this with the Griffin. This is very powerful control. Also, at this level, I would pick your least favorite spell and retrain it into the Mass Suggestion spell. This is another spell that, again, completely fits the theme of this character, very on point, and doesn't take concentration and can end an encounter. The suggestion, I believe you can target up to 8 creatures, and the suggestion lasts for 24 hours. At level 13, we are a Bard 12, and we get our next ability score increase or feat, and I'm going to take Resilient Constitution. This bumps our Constitution by 1 and gives us save proficiency with it up there. Importantly, we also get an additional hit point per level because we bumped our Constitution, which gives us a big fat 107 hit points. We don't learn any additional spells here, but you can continue to retrain as you like and as you need. At level 13, it is time for our next tactics report, and what has changed since last time? We've gotten 5th and 6th level spells and slots. We have found a greater steed in a griffin. Our psychic blades has jumped up to 5d6 extra damage, and we've gotten expertise in the last of our social skills, as well as proficiency in constitution saves. So, our damage per round plan, we're going to continue to set up with either Fairy Fire or Greater Invisibility and Hexblade's Curse. Now, importantly, if we do Greater Invisibility, because it's, again, a spell that only targets us, and we do cast it while mounted on our steed would also become invisible. So, we could, Invisible Dark Stranger, Invisible Griffin, both making attacks with advantage, obviously, because they can't be seen. And this is going to be our damage per round setup. Now, for control, we are going to set up again with a spell of our choice and apply Hexblade's Curse. Now, if it were me, I would be doing double eye bite utilizing the Griffin. Again, very powerful, super cool combo, and Bards are the only class in the game that can pull this off because they can get access to both Find Greater Steed and eye bite. Because Find Greater Steed is normally a paladin only spell, and paladins never get above 5th level spells, so paladins can't get eye bite. So really cool thing that only bards can do and fits really well with our character. We can also continue to use non-concentration spells as needed. We've added Synaptic Static here, as well as we still have Wrath of them, Psychic Lance, Command, Dissonant Whispers, Mass Suggestion, and overall we are a control monster. But what does our damage per round look like? Well, we have 2 hand crossbow attacks, each with a +10 to hit with advantage, thanks to us being invisible. Doing a d6 plus 10 damage thanks to Hexblade's Curse, and they crit on a 19 or 20, again thanks to Hexblade's Curse. We have our Psychic Blades doing 5d6 damage once per turn, and that burns our Bardic Inspiration, but we've got 5 of them and they come back on a short rest, so I'm not concerned about that being a resource that I don't want to use. Our Griffin has its Bite and Claw attacks that it will make with advantage, doing 1d8 plus 4 piercing damage with its Bite and 2d6 plus 4 slashing damage with its Claws. So against an enemy with an armor class of 10, we would be doing 69.1 damage per round. And against an enemy with an AC of 17 and plus 7 to their saves, we would be doing 60.9 damage per round with our setup. And since last time, this is an increase of 30.4 points against the low armor class and 25.3 points against the higher armor class. And this is an increase of over 70%. And while we are not necessarily, competing with other damage per round builds that are dedicated to it, this is a significant increase since last time, and we are, a little bit worse than our Conquest Paladin in terms of our damage per round. But I would definitely say at this point, our control is arguably better than that character. At level 14, we are going to be a Bard 13. This means our Song of Rest healing improves to a D10, pretty minor. But we also get a 7th level spell slot and a 7th level spell of our choice. And I would learn Force Cage. This is it's almost like a more powerful version of Wall of Force, but doesn't require concentration. And so we can use this to lock an enemy inside a cage and they basically can't get out. If they want to teleport out, which is like the only way, they have to make a save against our spell save DC. And yeah, this is a very powerful control spell. You can pick something else if you want, but this one is super good and I would not pass it up. Level 15, we are Bard 14, and this means that we get the Whispers Bard capstone, which is called Shadow Lore. And what this does, it says that we gain the ability to weave dark magic into our words and tap into a creature's deepest fears. As an action, we can magically whisper a phrase that only one target of our choice within 30 feet of us can hear. The target must make a wisdom saving throw against our spell save DC, and it automatically succeeds if it doesn't share our language or if it can't hear us. But, even if we were in the area of a silent spell, we could use our telepathic thing. So they will always be able to hear us. Thanks, telepathic. And on a successful save, the whisper sounds like unintelligible mumbling and has no effect. But if they fail to save, they are charmed by us for the next 8 hours or until we or our allies attack it, damage it, or force it to make a saving throw. So probably not going to be using this in combat because of that line. They interpret the whispers as a description of their most mortifying secret. Now, we don't get to learn what the secret is, but the target is convinced that we know it. The charmed creature obeys our commands for fear that we will reveal its secret. It won't risk its life for us, or fight for us, unless it was already inclined to do so, but it will grant us favors and gifts it would offer to a close friend. And when the effect ends, the target has no understanding of why we held it in such fear, and we can use this once per long rest. So this is something that we're going to be using to manipulate key figures, most likely out of combat. And this just fits so well overall with what we do. We infiltrate, we learn secrets, and we manipulate things to our own ends. And, if you did this against a player and this was a villain, it would be really funny. And tell me about it if you've done something like that. Now, as a 14th level bard, we also get our next round of magical secrets, and these can be now spells of 7th level or lower. Now, in particular here, there are 2 spells that I want. They're both off the wizard list. The first one is Tensor's Transformation. This one is out of Xanathar's. It's a 6th level spell, takes an action to cast, and takes our concentration for up to 10 minutes. Now, a lot of people don't like this spell, and I'll get into why as I talk about it here. But this is a very, very powerful spell for our damage per round, and I envision that when we cast this spell, because it targets only us, it can also target our griffin. And so we are going to do this powerful, terrifying transformation, basically. And what does this spell do? So when we cast it, these are the benefits that we get. We get 50 temporary hit points, and if any are left when the spell ends, they are lost. So, but again, this applies to us and the griffin. We get advantage on attack rolls we make with simple and martial weapons. This will apply to us and, again, the griffin. So advantage on all attacks. Great. When we hit a target with a weapon attack, the target takes an extra 2d12 force damage. So we're getting advantage, extra damage on hit. Great. We also get proficiency with all armor, shields, simple weapons, and martial weapons. Great. Doesn't really matter. We don't care. We get proficiency in strength and constitution saves. Now, we already had constitution save proficiency, so this is kind of nice, but not fantastic. And it also lets us attack twice instead of once when we take the attack action on our turn, and you don't benefit from this if you already had extra attack. So this will let us make now 3 crossbow attacks. And while our griffin had a multi-attack feature, this will let it attack twice with its claws instead of once with the beak and once with the claws. So it's a little damage buff there. And immediately after the spell ends, we must succeed on a DC 15 con save or suffer 1 level of exhaustion. This is potentially bad, especially if we lose our concentration on the spell. But we're going to be doing things to fortify this and fix it. And with our con save proficiency, we have plus 11, not plus 11, plus 8 to this save. So we have a reasonable chance of succeeding. This is going to be our main damage per round thing going forward. And I understand if you don't want to use it, but this combo is so cool. And again, this is something that's only available to bards because again, Tensor's Transformation is a wizard spell, and Find Greater Steed is a paladin spell. And so there's no way to get these on the same character without being a bard. Now, for our other magical secret that we're going to take, I'm going to be taking the Simulacrum spell. This is another wizard exclusive spell, and this spell is absolutely ridiculous. What the Simulacrum spell does is it basically creates a copy of you. It has half your hit points. It can't regain expended spell slots, but it can recover any other things. So we use this to make a copy of ourselves, it'll be able to have its own Found Greater Steed, its own Griffin. It'll be able to have its own Bardic Inspiration dice. It'll get back its Bardic Inspiration and its, Hexblade's Curse and all that on a short rest. And this spell is honestly ridiculous, and I completely understand if your table won't allow it. But you can't have more than one Simulacrum, but there is a little bit of cheesiness where you can have your Simulacrum make copies of itself. I'm not going to be assuming that we do that. I'm assuming that we only have one. And even if we have higher level spell slots, it won't make more than one copy for us. It will just overwrite the one that we already have. I'm going to be assuming that we have one Simulacrum of ourself going forward when I do the calculations, but because the spell is so powerful, I'm also going to be talking about what our damage will look like even if we don't have the Simulacrum. Now, importantly here, we're going to do a spell retrain. I would pick your least favorite spell and retrain it for Greater Restoration. Now, importantly, what this spell can potentially do, among many very beneficial things, is it can remove a level of exhaustion. So, if we finish the combat encounter and we fail our save against the exhaustion effect of Tensor's Transformation, we can just cast Greater Restoration on ourselves and get rid of that level of exhaustion. So this is not only do we have this spell available, we also have the tools in our backpack to solve it should it actually become a problem. At level 16, we are a Bard 15. This means our Bardic Inspiration jumps to a D12. Again, we don't really care because we're mostly using our Bardic Inspiration for Psychic Blades, which now does 8d6 damage when we use it. We also get an 8th level spell in slot here, and there's a lot of good ones. I would pick whatever you want, but on this build, I'm going to be taking Feeble Mind. This lets us pick somebody and basically reduce their intelligence to like 2. And they can't cast spells or communicate and that kind of thing. And so you can use this to completely wipe an enemy caster. And this would be especially effective, again, on a villain version of this character that you as a DM might play against your party. You pick the caster, you feeble their mind, and suddenly they're a worthless, drooling, incompetent person. And overall, very fun, very powerful, and a good thing to have in the arsenal of this, whether it's a player character or an NPC villain. At level 17, we are a Bard 16, and we get another ability score increase or feat here. And what I'm going to do is take the Lucky Feat. This gives you 3 luck points that you can spend. It lets you roll another d20 on a saving throw, an attack roll, or an ability check. And you can choose if you want to roll the dice after you see it. And what I'm going to be using this for potentially is to fortify any save that we might have to make to maintain Tensor's Transformation or anything critical like that. So you can also take Warcaster here to help you maintain your concentration, because it'll give you advantage on concentration checks. But in my opinion, Lucky is a little more flexible because we can also use this against the con save to avoid the exhaustion. So if you want to take Warcaster, you can, but I think Lucky might just fit better with how I would play the character, and I think situationally could be more useful. So at level 17, it is time for our last tactics report. What has changed since last time? We've gained 7th and 8th level spells and slots. We've gained 7th level magical secrets, namely Tensor's Transformation and Simulacrum. I'm going to be assuming that we have one Simulacrum, and our Simulacrum doesn't have a Simulacrum. We've also gained our luck points, as well as our Psychic Blade's damage is now 8d6. Now, before our damage per round, we had a pretty big spike last time, but now we are going to become an absolutely insane damage per round character, and let's talk about how we achieve that. So our damage per round plan, our setup turn is going to be casting Tensor's Transformation on ourselves, which will also apply to our Griffin, as well as applying our Hexblade's Curse. Our control plan hasn't really changed. We're going to set up with the control spell of our choice and Hexblade's Curse. Again, it's probably going to be double eye bite, utilizing the feature of Find Greater Steed. So us and our Griffin will be able to eye bite targets. We will continue to use our important non-concentration spells as needed. We've got things like Feeble Mind now, or Force Cage, Rathalam Psychic Lance, Mass Suggestion, all of that we have for control. Now, our Simulacrum with their Griffin will either be doing damage per round or control as needed. Now, importantly, their spell slots never come back, so over time, your Simulacrum might need to replace it to get back the higher level spell slots. But for the sake of my math, I'm going to assume they have the spell slots necessary to fire off Tensor's Transformation when we are doing our damage per round. So now we have 3 hand crossbow attacks that we're making thanks to the extra attack from Tensor's Transformation. They still have advantage, again, thanks to Tensor's Transformation, and they're doing 1d6 plus 2d12 plus 11 damage and crit on a 19 or 20. Our Simulacrum will also be able to do this because they also have Hexblade's Curse. Our Psychic Blade's damage is now 8d6 and is scaled very well. Our Griffin gets to make 2 claw attacks now, instead of a claw attack and a beak attack, with advantage thanks to Tensor's Transformation, doing 2d6 plus 2d12 damage plus 4. And our Simulacrum gets to replicate all this damage if they're also doing the damage per round. So what does this damage look like? So against an enemy with an armor class of 10 and no bonus to their saves, we would be doing 175.8 damage per round with no Simulacrum, and 351.6 damage per round with 1 Simulacrum and their Griffin. Against an enemy with an armor class of 18 and plus 8 to their saves, we would be doing 152.8 damage per round with no Simulacrum, or 305.6 damage per round with 1 Simulacrum and their Griffin. And this is crazy. This is, I think, the best damage per round I've made on any build to this point. Now, it doesn't necessarily beat out, best case situation, necromancy, huge army of skeletons. I think that one's like over 800. But this one is much easier to maintain, and you and the Griffin are a lot harder to kill. So since last time, this is an increase of 282.5 points against the lower armor class and 244.7 points against the higher armor class. And in both cases, these are increases of, I believe that should actually be 400%, not 600%. But we have increased our damage 5-fold, and this is pretty crazy. Even without the Simulacrum, we have gained 106.7 points against the low armor class and 91.9 against the higher armor class. And these are increases, again, that should be probably 250%, and it should be 150% and 150% because it's like a 2.5x increase. And so this is your crazy increases. We have, significantly boosted our damage even without the Simulacrum, and then doubled it because we have the Simulacrum. And yeah, we at this point, because of our spell combinations with the Find Greater Steed, we have transitioned to potentially being one of the best damage per round dealers in the game, while also having very powerful control. So in summary, what is the overall score of this build? Now to calculate this, I take our numbers from all of our damage reports against our different armor classes and I average them. So the overall score of this build is a 115.9. And this is actually the best of any damage per round build I've made to this point. Now there is an asterisk there, that is with the Simulacrum going. It will be a 74.8 without the Simulacrum, which does that does not beat our Hexblade Herald of Vengeance Paladin. That one is around 90. But if you have a Simulacrum going, this build, in addition to all the control, is a better damage per round character, even than our dedicated damage per round characters. But that comes with a huge asterisk. It only comes online basically at level 15 and beyond once you're a Bard 14 with all of the magical secrets, namely Tensor's Transformation as well as Simulacrum. Now, if I was going to take this version of the build to level 20, I would go Bard 19. This will give us 9th level spells as well as magical secrets that can cover anything 9th level or less. So you're going to have Wish and that kind of thing, as well as another ability score increase or feat. You might sneak in that Warcaster or +2 Con or whatever you want there. Other Bard subclasses you could do with this build, you could potentially pull something like this off with the Glamour Bard. They've got some cool things that they can do, and maybe use another Warlock level to get Agonizing Blast, and so you'd be firing off Eldritch Blast from range rather than making the weapon attacks. But the Whispers Bard kind of beats that out because of that basically rogue sneak attack that they get from Psychic Blades. And I think, I would probably stick with obviously the Whispers Bard for any build that you want with this theme, but you can kind of take the high level magical secrets combos that we did and do them with any bard. And yeah, our main Find Greater Steed combos with Eye Bite for that doubled control or potentially even quadrupled control if our Simulacrum is doing it as well with their Griffin. That can be very, very powerful control. And we've also got that Tensor's Transformation to just go full God mode, Super Saiyan, even if you are a fan of DBZ and want to go that route. But this spell combined with Find Greater Steed is pretty crazy. And honestly, I was super impressed with the damage per round this character is able to pump out with that spell going. The fact that for most of this character's career, they're a pretty mediocre damage per round dealer. They're pulling their own weight, but they're not really competing. And then the fact that once you hit level 15, they become such a good damage per round character that it overshadows everything else that they were doing up to that point. And now they're at a god tier damage per round character. It's pretty cool. If you are playing a high level campaign and want to do damage per round, you can do it, and the fact that you can do this with a bard and pull this out is just something that's super cool, and I would absolutely go for. It might surprise a lot of people at your table, and it definitely surprised me when I was making this build. Now, in that regard, Simulacrum is a silly spell. The fact that you don't have to replicate yourself. You could also replicate one of your allies with this spell. So you could say, you have a high level fighter who has, the spell doesn't replicate their gear, but you could replicate a high level fighter or another high level caster. And just the fact that you've basically gotten that extra character in your party, even if their spell slots don't come back, you can always just make another one. And at this level, you'll probably be rolling in gold. And this spell takes, I think the consumables only cost 1,500 gold. Yeah, so overall, this spell is crazy, super powerful. This is the first time I've used it on a build, and the fact that you can, double yourself, and your double has a griffin, and your griffin transforms. Super powerful, very fun, but honestly, this spell is pretty overpowered, and I'm not sure. I think if I, as a DM, would probably, start balancing encounters around you having the Simulacrum, and that's an important thing to consider when you want to go for a combo like this. If you're going to be doing this for a high level one shot, you might want to let your DM know that you're going to be doing this because it's very powerful. So overall, this was our Dark Stranger in the corner. I'm pleasantly surprised with where this build arrived and what it's capable of. I think the Find Steed combos that you can do with it are really cool. And overall, this one was really fun to put together and would fit a theme for a Halloween one shot or a spooky villain or something like that. And if you want to try this out, please let me know in the comments, or if you've done something similar, I'd love to hear about it. Thanks for watching. Again, my name is Nathan, and I will see you next time.